honesty, I'm not entirely sure how tonight's lesson's gonna go, because I started changing things as I thought I was gonna be refining, and I ended up changing some things, so this may be a little bit more scattered, but I think hopefully there's gonna be enough there that will be a useful lesson with some practical takeaways. So the theme, we kind of did it a little bit out of order because of course Brother Doug's not with us tonight. So my section would actually be Tuesday's lesson, and it would be on why be holy. And we're going to look at some of the things for that, because I think I found it a very contemporary topic. But before we begin with the actual lesson, I want to start with a little bit of an exercise perhaps that might help set the tone at least for what we're going to be talking about tonight. I know we have some people with either an educator background, and I think all of us have been in a school classroom at one time or another. I want you to think back to your days in school to perhaps the most influential teacher you ever had. A teacher that really had an impact on your life. And perhaps even the subject matter. It's interesting, sometimes you have a subject that you really dread, and then you get a really good teacher, and it changes your whole opinion on the subject. So I want you to think about that. We're just going to do a little bit of brainstorming. I'm not going to make a big list up here, but I just want you to start mentioning some of the characteristics, some of the things that were that stood out about that particular teacher and his or her abilities and character. What was it that made the difference with that teacher? What were some of the characteristics of them?
Hands-on.
Hands-on, right?
Yeah. Demonstrated what was supposed to be understood.
Connected with you,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
You know,
because the
showed
teacher
you.
in the previous subject, he was just
theoretical
lecturing
or
what,
up
yes,
forward, right?
yeah, no, nothing on the board, just over everybody's head. So, and this next teacher in that same subject, she said, what, you don't know this? She
All
said,
right, start.
This is what a table is, you go, this and this. Oh, hey, duh.
Yeah. What were some other, like,
Mr. Favreau, grade 11 physics.
Okay.
Very passionate guy.
mhm.
Yeah, stuck with me.
I had a-
Mr. Polak, grade 10 science as well. It's all high school days. Very passionate, very excitable.
Mhm.
Loved the science, very patient with us when we didn't get something. Stuck around after class or before class. Happy to go through things umpteen
Mhm.
times before we got it. Which I've seen have teachers that had no patience for that.
Yeah, and the class, I'm out of here.
See you later.
That
I
happens
gotta do
too,
somewhere
right?
else, yeah.
I had this one teacher, actually, ironically, he has a park named after him next to Ricky's house, RJA Potts. You know the RJA Potts Park there?
Yeah, yeah.
On Lansbridge, I think it is, off Lansbridge on the right side.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, that was my history teacher. He was really influential. If you wanted his class, you had to sign up early, like when you were getting your course selections in. And me and a couple of my friends, used to actually go to his office. The history room had this kind of long narrow office at the back of the room, and we used to just go hang out there with him, talk about things history related, non-history related. He always had time for us. But a really influential guy, great sense of humor, a really good educator. He would contemporize subjects for us. One of his favorite things was kind of taking different people from the class and sort of talking out a scenario using the people from the class and what would kind of happen to each of you. I remember his lectures on the First World War and what it was like to be in the trenches, and and so he wasn't so bright. So we'll get him to hit the wire, and the rest of you guys all go across on his back, and well, sorry Joe, it's a little late for you, the machine guns got him. And that's how it was. It really kind of gave you an idea of what it was like to be there. But let me ask you another question. Your best teachers, were they the ones that always gave you the best grades, the highest grades? No. No. In fact,
He hammered me, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
it was hard to get an A in some of those
Yeah.
teachers' classes, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was really tough to get an A, but when you got it,
Mm.
it was that much sweeter, right? It was that much sweeter. And yeah.
Actually, I remember in grade 3 that her name was Mrs. Herbert, and she was very strict but very thorough and very smart. And one day her daughter acted up, and she didn't spare her from having the rock.
Mhm.
She sent it to the headmaster, go get the the straps on me,
Mhm.
and that put fear into us.
Spared not his own son, right? Well, daughter in this case.
I did that to Philip.
Yeah, it got me in trouble, yeah. Oh, yeah, you gave me a punch once, I
At
think, in
Easter
class.
camp,
Yeah,
I was a
yeah.
counselor and.
No, that was Carter Hill. Carter Hill got it from you, or maybe I got it
Really?
from you too.
Okay.
He was on the edge of the end of the bed,
Oh.
hanging off the ceiling pipe, and he was a big kid.
What?
And he was doing these belly flops onto these old sprung mattress beds. And he came in, guys, watch me. He didn't see Edmund coming. Edmund just gave him a good one across the backside. He grabbed his buns and then fell into the bed. Oh, we talked about that for years after.
Really?
I don't
Edmund
remember
was
that.
one of my I just
first
remember that
counselors.
your dad gave me permission to spank you.
Yeah, I
So
don't know if he,
I took advantage of that.
okay.
I
I
had
don't recall that.
permission, and then everyone else respected
Yeah.
me the whole week long.
Whipping boy, huh? I think this outlines a couple things. One, a good teacher is one that connects with us, right? Has a care, compassion for the students, wants to see every student increase, right? Increase in their understanding, their love of the subject, regardless of ability. You know, the really good teachers don't just pick the best students in the class and say, okay, I'm going to concentrate my effort on you guys because you guys are going to excel and the rest of you, good luck. No, they don't do that, right? And one of the other characteristics is they're very fair, very just, right? In the way that they treat their pupils. Because why? It gains respect, doesn't it? When you know this guy's not going to play favorites. And it's always kind of interesting, you see some students try to cozy up to the teacher, and they kind of see through it, right? And the rest of the class goes, oh, he's on to this guy, right? He's not going to be hoodwinked. Okay, so what does this all have to do with why be holy? Well, I'm going to use this little exercise that we did, I guess, right now, to kind of frame the motivations for holiness like a good teacher. There are two sides to why we should be holy. One of them is because what God has done for us, in reaching out to us, in taking us from perhaps the back of the class and working with us, spending extra time and effort with us to bring us up, right? Everything that He's done. And of course that's very superficial when we compare it to teacher, to what God has done. But the principles, I think, are there. There's that principle. And there's also another one, is a good teacher is one who's just and fair. And his compassion for his students doesn't overrule his or her sense of justice. The grades have to be fair. And you may be a friend of his, but if he catches you cheating on a test, right? There was even a movie with Kevin Kline, who was a teacher. He was the actor. He was a history teacher. That's what I remember. And there was the one student who was kind of his prized pupil. He came from a kind of a really well-to-do family, and he really thrived on kind of bringing this kid out and getting him to work. And it turned out the kid was hoodwinking him. He was playing him, and he was cheating. And he found out about it. And it was it was just a movie, but it was interesting to see the sense of fairness battle with his love for the student. I'm not recommending you go watch the movie or anything like that. I remember seeing it years and years and years ago, and it just kind of triggered. So these two sides of God and His holiness, and how He relates to us, that should motivate us to desire His holiness. One is what He's done for us, His compassion, His ability to empathize with us. But on the other hand, there's also His sense of justice. And even your best teacher, if you didn't study for those tests, and you didn't hand in assignments on time. I had a friend in school who also liked to hang around with history teachers, and he was a slacker. And even though we were all kind of friends with these teachers, that teacher didn't cut him any slack when it came to handing in assignments late. Okay, you can hand this one in late, but you're undocumented and automatic, whatever the percentage was for each day late, and then 0. No mercy. And if it was something really important, you had to have it in on that day, or otherwise, you got 0. Sorry. Even though there was a relationship there. Okay, that was kind of a long-winded introduction, but I think it kind of sets the stage and hopefully now frames what we're going to talk about in terms of the scriptures and some of these things. So let's talk now on a very high level. God calls us to be holy. That's the theme of camp, right? And God said, "Be ye holy." Pretty straightforward. But what gives God the right to impose His will on us? one of the defining things of the creation of man was the ability to choose. So what gives him the right to say, you be holy?
But he's not really imposing his will. He's telling us what he wants us to do, but
Yep.
it's ultimately our choice.
Yes. It is a command, but it's not a sovereign decree. Which is an important point, and will be brought up even later in the week, that holiness is not a passive thing. Though we are declared holy through Christ's work, we are still, through a process called sanctification, becoming holy, growing into the image of Christ. And that doesn't complete here below.
One compelling reason is that if you want to be with God, you got to be holy.
Yes. That,
He says, there shall no mortal man see me and live.
mhm. There's a few verses. I'm going to skip ahead. We're going to go a little bit out of order here. Hebrews 12:14. Someone want to find that? I'll just give out a couple verses, and perhaps whoever has them can read them when we get to them. Revelations 20 verse 6 and Ephesians 4:21-24. We'll use those ones to begin with.
Hebrews 12:14. Follow peace with all men and holiness, without which no man shall see the Lord.
And holiness, without which no man shall see the Lord. So holiness is not an optional thing if you want to be in heaven one day. It's not. Now, why is that? Well, holiness is a really tough subject to discuss. Famously, the quote from Rabbi Zacharias, right, who some of you may have heard before, is that when we talk about holiness for us, we're often talking about the absence of something, the absence of sin, the absence of bad behavior, the absence of a carnal attitude, the absence of pride. Yet with God, when we talk about holiness, it's really a fullness of everything. So one useful working definition for God's holiness, I'm going to put these ones up there because I think they're worth keeping in mind. So God's holiness can be thought of, and this jumps off of Brother Brian's lesson, the totality of his character. Now, why can we say that? Well, do you remember Brother Brian's lesson? It was a little while ago now, but this idea of a whole, right, complete. The only attribute of God, in fact, I don't even know if this is ever done anywhere else in Scripture, but the only attribute of God that's repeated 3 times is holy, 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 right? 3 times. I don't know of any other time that's done. There's other places where things are spoken twice for emphasis. Martha, Martha, right? Verily, verily is another one. There are others. You can find other examples where you say it once, should be enough, but when you say it twice, that's emphasis. And I've heard it said that when you say something 3 times in Scripture, especially when it's said of God, that's like, that ends it. There's nothing more to say. It's complete. As God is 3 in 1 and He's complete, so to say something 3 times settles it. There's nothing higher. There's nothing greater. So holy, holy, holy. And I think of this as this. Those 3 holies. He is self-existent, eternal, and infinite. There was nothing before Him. He was. No one had to speak Him into being. So his name was I Am. And that was it. I Am. He's eternal. He has no beginning, neither end. Though we don't have an end in the sense that we are created eternal beings, but we have a beginning. There was a time where we began. And He is infinite. There is no limit to Him. No limit to His power, no limit to His knowledge, no limit to His greatness, no limit to any of His attributes either. So when we talk about this holy, holy, holy God, I think it's useful to remember it in this. We're going to contrast this also. So why can He say, be ye holy? Well, because we were made in his image. He made us. The one who creates us has power over the thing that he creates, right? You think of an artist creating a masterpiece, he has power over that piece of work to do with it as he will. It's his right. Now, of course, God gave his creation a will, which is interesting. We don't have that ability. I can make something that looks like a person, but it doesn't have the will of a person. And we're going to contrast that. So we're made in his image, and therefore we're intended to be holy as well. He knows us better than anyone else, including ourselves, and his standard of holiness for us was what we were created to live in. This whole topic of why be holy became clearer to me when I began looking at what happened in the garden with the fall. Because on the other side of the fall, before the fall, you get to see what God intended, exactly as he intended it. Man was holy, woman was holy, God was holy, and there was this beauty of relationship that happened. That's when everything was right. Our problem is, when we view holiness now, we're on the other side of the fall. Our view is distorted. To us, normal is unholy. Normal is not holy for us. Okay? So if that's God's holiness, I have another equation, I guess, which actually came from Brother Edmund in our talks. So that's God's holiness. So what is our holiness? Because obviously there are some characteristics of God that we share with him that are communicable, that he can teach us and bring about in us. Some that we are innately born with, some of his attributes. But there's other ones that we can never attain. We'll never be omniscient. I think not in the fullness that God is. We will never be all-powerful the way that he is, right? And we certainly have had a beginning, even though our life continues past earthly death. So our holiness, and I like this one. Hopefully you can read my block caps. I gave up on mixed case writing years ago. Holy. I think that's a pretty good working definition for our holiness, our pursuit of holiness. Now, I'm not talking about positional holiness, that the holiness of Christ being transferred onto us through faith by grace. This is now the holiness that we are called to be ye holy, right? This is what God is expecting. So the problem is that man left God's standards of holiness through disobedience, right? The fall. And as a result, he now measures himself by his own standards, right? Based on his limited view of reality and flawed sinful nature. And that's going to bridge into the next question, which is why does humanity not want to be holy? It's not even seen as a desirable attribute. If you were to ask someone on the street, do you want to be holy? Why would you want to be? What kind of a question is that? Right? That's like for Mother Teresa, and that's for people in monasteries or some kind of moral institution. That's not the average guy.
I guess being holy is seen as being kind of boring, restricted from all the fun things, the illicit, the forbidden fruit.
Yeah, we even use that turn of phrase, right? Based on what happened in the garden. I think it basically comes out to this: we don't like being told what to do. It's really that simple. We don't like being told what to do. I tell my kids to do something, and I don't like it. Someone tells me to do something, I don't really like that either, right? You kind of modify your behavior as you get older. But one of the things that the kids learn very early is how powerful the word no is, right? And then even later on, the things that kind of come out, you're not the boss of me, right?
Or who do you think you are? God?
Yeah. you get that
But
comes
even
very
that
natural.
comes from an innate sense of, even the secular, the atheist will say, who do you think you are, God?
Mhm.
There's an innate sense that there is a higher power when they say something like that. I
Mhm.
mean, they've all stumbled over their own words in the past, right? And for those who think that somehow, the fall in the garden, well, don't blame me for what Adam did, don't we?
Yeah, I know.
We grasp at God all the time, that's exactly what they did, you grasp at God, arrogating to yourself what belongs to Him. They grasp at God, what did they do then? Hide, what did we do? Grasp at God, we know we sinned, we hide. We do it all the time, and the parallels are, they're blatant.
What does arrogating mean again?
Arrogate to yourself, to
To
take for
accumulate,
your,
to
to
take to
accumulate to
yourself,
yourself what does not belong to you.
Yeah, to grasp.
Yeah.
You know, the cardinal man wants to be the master of his own life, and you know, the account of what happened in the garden, right? I always thought that was fascinating. It could have been any act that would have triggered disobedience, right, and sin, the entrance of sin. God could have picked anything and said, you know, don't cross this line.